Hello and welcome to Transformation Now, which is a division of Soaring Higher Rocks. Hi, I'm Rita Rocker Craft. I want to talk to you today about attitudes that overcome. And I've given a lot of presentations, coaching, training, and written several books. And my desire is to really help you to go forward in life and to overcome and achieve those things that are really close to your heart. So like I said, today we're going to talk about attitudes that overcome. Do you know the most important thing a person can wear is confidence? Not expensive clothing, not fancy jewelry, but confidence. And we get that by building ourselves up and associating with those that will also help to build us up. So we'll talk a lot today about confidence because that will really direct your life in the direction you want to go and where you end up. And it can be hard. I had no confidence growing up. I still fight with it. And so I understand that that can really keep us down when we were meant to soar and be equipped with the things that, to use the gifts that we have, that God's given to us. And so the biggest single factor, again, and whether people take us seriously or not, is our opinion of ourselves. And that's so important. It's our self-esteem. We think about our jobs, relationships, our finances. Those are so affected by our self-esteem. So what is that? It's basically founded on how we see ourselves and how we believe other people see us, which is our perception of ourselves and their perception of us. And it's really quick to make a negative first impression quite often. I've talked about that in some of my other programs. And it also is something that we can build up to build a good reputation and build up our self-esteem. So what does self-esteem have to do with getting a good job, getting the best relationships, the best friends? Well, basically everything. It does. So again, it's how we see ourselves, but also how we allow ourselves to be treated. You might think, really? And I thought, the first time I heard that, I thought, yes, I guess I do allow myself to be treated well or to be treated poor. And so we really do have a lot of power in what we'll put up with, what we do, who we associate with. And so remember, we allow ourselves to be treated either well or poorly, depending so much on our self-esteem and our self-image. So I want to talk to you today about that quite a bit. And so, but it will affect how we get along with our friends, our families, our neighbors, our co-workers, our employees, if you are, manager, etc. And so think about that. We often limit ourselves by the way we think, how we interpret ourselves and the world based on our past experiences, especially for those of you who had a really rough past like I have. A lot of times we base our self-worth on that. Well, I'm unworthy to have a good person in my life. I'm unworthy to have a good job that'll pay me well. I'm unworthy to have friends who will treat me right. No, we are all worthy of that. We're all God's children. So we look out and we get what we expect to see, expect to hear, and expect to experience. So if we expect to get treated roughly or be in a poor job, because that's all we've seen in the past. We see ourselves as doing things that we don't want to do because that's what we expect. That's what we've experienced. And unfortunately, the familiar in our lives often keeps us there because we're afraid to step out of what's familiar and to go forward. And what do we expect to hear? Oh, you're no good, you're worthless, you'll never amount to anything. Or do we expect to hear, hey, you can do it, great job, keep going, let's work on this together. And then expect to experience whether it's good things or bad things. And there's so many stories. I can share some with you. I will in just a little bit, of people who are what we call famous failures. And so nobody needs to stay down. I remember when I was Mrs. Nebraska years ago, and my husband died during my term, and when I spoke at a conference shortly after that, the women were expecting me to talk about that kind of thing in the pageant world. And they said, well, your message wasn't at all what we expected. And I said, well, what did you expect? And they said, well, we thought you were going to talk about all of those things. And I said, no, I've been called to work with people. When they fall down, they get back up, they dust their knees off, and they get back in the race. And that's what life's all about. We keep getting up. We keep going forward. And I'll have some great examples for you in a few minutes. So we have to be careful not to stay in the familiar. You know, I love this picture where it shows a small round little fish bowl, and there are some fish in it. And then right next to it is this great, big, huge, beautiful fishing tank. And it shows these little fish jumping from one end to the other. And it's such a good reminder not to stay where we are if we're confined, but to take that leap, which is scary quite often and can be difficult, to the rewards that are on the other side. So, you know, we often, again, determine our worth by and I call them lame, opinions of other people and what they've said to us, whether it's a parent, whether it's kids, whether it's bullying, whether it was a teacher, all of those things. How do we determine that? And so many people, I've found out, feel unworthy of good things. And we're God's kids. We're made in His image. So we are very, very worthy to go forward. And sometimes it's like, well, you're not as smart as everybody else, or you're too cute, and powerful people aren't cute, or men might be hearing, well, you can't cry, you can't show your emotions because that makes you look weak, which is a total lie. And so anyway, so many times opinions will determine our value and our worth. And we can't do that. I have a nephew, and his dad had said, oh, shut up, you're not worth anything, you have nothing to say. And so that's where his life is now. And so we block those out, and we do what I call brain jitsu. You know, when you do jujitsu, you flip people. A lot of times you do things. And I recently turned in my book about powering up, becoming indispensable in this global economy. And we talked about brain jitsu. And so when those thoughts come in, I can't do this, I'm not worth it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, it's like, whoa, immediately you change your mind, you switch your gears, you flip, you do a little brain jitsu. Yes, I am powerful, I am strong, I'm someone of great character, I have God's mind in me. And you flip those comments immediately that are going around in your head. If you keep thinking about all those great comments and the good things about you instead, your life changes dramatically because you're seeing it, you're hearing it, now you're believing it, and you're acting it out. And it really does work. It really does. So sometimes I tell people too, you know, if you feel inadequate to try for a job that you really, 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 really want, think about it. You know, I've heard a lot of employers say it's easier to train someone on job skills than it is on attitude and personality. So sometimes a person may not have quite all the education they need yet, but they have the drive, they have the passion, they have everything they need to really go forward and to take the classes they need and do what they want. So sometimes if you feel a little bit nervous about trying for a job, you don't know if you're qualified for, maybe education or experience-wise, show them your passion. Talk to them about all of the other skills you have in your personal life that relate to this professional life. And in my next program, I'll be talking to you about that quite a bit. But that's very, very important. Don't let what you consider your liabilities compare with someone else's what we call assets, because you need to nurture and grow your gifts, your abilities. I see people, you see all these programs on TV, these reality shows, and I thought, you know, what does that do for us? If we would sit there and watch those reality shows, oh, I wish I had their money, I wish I had their looks, I wish I had their car, I wish I had their clothes. What does that do for you? And so all that time can be better used to go online, get educational classes, hang with people that are really positive and motivated and will help you go along with them. So I always say, you know, skip the reality shows and you become the reality yourself, because you have the ability to do that. So there's a comment that says, if you always do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always had. And I think that's so true. So again, we have to break that mold, and we can take one step at a time. I think I shared this in one other program, but I'll share it again because it seems so fitting. And that's the discovery that was made by some researchers and how we give up too easily when something finally has come right in front of us where we could take it. And it's a story about a barracuda and a mackerel, who's the barracuda's favorite meal, and they were put in a large fish tank, and they had a glass partition between the two. And so for 3 days, this barracuda banged its little fish nose against that glass because it wanted so badly to eat that mackerel. And it tried and it tried and it tried. And it was right there, he could see it, but he couldn't get to it. Like so many times we feel with a partner or a career or something like that. Well, the end of the third day, they took the glass partition away to see what the barracuda would do then. But its little fish brain had conditioned itself at that point to go, yeah, it's right in front of me, but I can't have it. It could have it. It could have had that for a great dinner. But in its little fish brain, it could, nope, I can't have that. And so how many times as people do we think about the reasons why things can't be done? We put up partitions in our own mind about, I've tried this, and I can't get anywhere. So I give up. I've done that. I think a lot of people have. I just give up. And right now, with everything that's been going on the last few months, a lot of people have given up. No, this is the time to soar forward now and think, nope, that obstacle is done. That's over with. I'm going forward. I'm capable, I'm intelligent, and I have God's personality, all of his abilities in me. I'm made in his image, and by golly, I'm going to go for it. So don't let those things that have happened to you keep you down. Rise up. Because many times we do that. But I was thinking about some of the people that I've seen. Homeless girl ended up going to Harvard on a scholarship. Susan Boyle, if you ever saw her on Britain's Got Talent, and she came out and everybody was mocking her and making fun of the way she looked. And as soon as she opened her mouth, everybody just sat there and their mouths opened up and they went, oh my gosh. They could not believe that, because here was this absolutely unbelievable voice coming out of this lady that people were rolling their eyes around. But she let her gift come out regardless of that. I think of Bob Wieland, who was a veteran in Vietnam who had his legs blown off during the Vietnam War. And then when he came back, he didn't want to just sit and feel sorry for himself. So he entered up an international weightlifting competition as he built his body up. And he won in bench press. And thought, oh, this is great. I can show people that, hey, you can do anything you want, even though you've lost almost half of your body. But they took the title away from him because he was not wearing competition clothing, which included shoes. And I stood there and I watched that and I thought, oh my gosh, the man doesn't have any legs. How many of us at that point would have said, hey, I'm done. I'm just going to go in my little corner and stay there and the heck with it. But instead, he thought, nope, they're not ever going to get me down. So he had apparatuses built for his hands and the trunk of his body, and he literally swung his body forward, put his hands down, and he apparently spent, I think it was close to 3 years, trying to walk across America and he's down where the exhaust is coming out of the vehicles and stuff, because he's way down there. But he did that to show you can do anything you set your mind to, and it was also a program to help raise money for food for hungry kids. So sometimes they think, whoa, I don't have anything that I can, compare to that. I think of Korea's Got Talent, and this poor kid, he was like 15, and he was homeless, and he was sleeping in school hallways, stairwells, and I think he won a few years ago when he got on there, because his determination was, I won't spend the rest of my life homeless, sleeping in hallways. And I was so blessed by that. Or armless guitar players, I've seen those. I've seen an armless mom who had a baby and was driving a car. She did everything with her feet. There's a young man named Nick Vujicic who was born with no arms or legs. He's an international speaker and author. He's married and has 2 children. So I want you to think about these things of all the gifts and abilities we have, even if there's a hindrance of some sort in your life. Walt Disney was badly abused by his father, and he couldn't play. He and his brother had to work on the farm. And yet what was in his mind this whole time was that he wanted to invent a life for people to have fun, to have an enjoyment. And so even though he didn't see that, hear that, or experience that at the time he was growing up, he did later through lots of trials along the way. But then also, look what he's done for millions of people. And so again, we can't let what's up here and what our experiences are hinder us from going forward in what we've been really called to do. Miss Teen America one year was living with a foster mom, had a $39 evening gown. No way near could compete with the other contestants in Miss Teen America, and she won. She did not let the fact that she didn't really have a home, have fancy clothing or anything keep her from her dreams. So I just want to encourage you with that too. And think about that. You know, we think about pack of flower seeds, for instance. Oh, you look at a pack of flower seeds. Aren't these gorgeous? These are so pretty. They would add so much color to my life, to my table, to my yard, whatever. And you think, oh, these are so gorgeous. And then you open up that little pack and you're going, oh, this isn't what, this is not what's on the picture. Okay, just like us, we have to work at it. So these little seeds are buried in the dirt and they're in the dark. And if it had a little mind, it'd think, gee, you know, I'm shriveled up, ugly little thing. I'm in the dirt, and now the rain's coming down, and it's probably going to wash me away. And what the heck am I going to do now? And then the sun comes down, but it starts to come out of the ground. It starts to develop. And you know, the sun will scorch it just like things do in our life, and you know, goes through all these things. But then you have beautiful roses or beautiful flowers. Did they start out that way? No. They went through a process. Do we start out that way? No. We go through a process too. And think about that process and your steps as you go forward to really arrive in life. So nourish your own abilities, make them grow. That's so important. And then think about the things that maybe you need to get rid of in your life. And quite often, I've experienced this, it could be your most important relationship, destructive, abusive, trying to keep you down. I don't want you to get out there and be successful, because what am I going to do then? Because I don't feel like it. And so always think about that. Just sit there and think about it for a while. What is keeping me down? What is trying to hold me back? Is it friends who want to just spend every night in the bar? Or, you know, family that just wants to watch TV 4 or 5 hours a night? What am I getting out of that? Am I going anywhere? Probably not. And so think about those things that maybe you want to get rid of there, or maybe you don't want to get rid of them at all. And that happens quite often. But you know you need to, because they're influencers and obstacles that are holding you back from reaching your goal. You know, our values are so often tied up in what we do, our bank account, what we drive, what our education was. You know, I know 3 women, extremely wealthy and successful, never had 1 hour of college. And so don't hold yourself back, even if it's something as far as a lack of education goes, because you can learn as you go along and you can grow. And, you know, without the money for college, you can go online and you can go on YouTube and learn probably just about everything you'd ever want to learn, and build up from there. So that's very important, not to compare ourselves. You know, you have, I've heard of people before, even though now we call them administrative assistants, for years the term was secretary. And I've heard women say, and I even felt like that when I was a secretary years ago, and it was like, well, I'm just a secretary. Oh, really? Well, you're probably an organizer and a mediator and a publisher and a technical whiz, and sometimes on the front line, and then a problem solver a lot of times for things that are going on. So always think of the skills and the things that you do. I mean, a custodian. Okay, it's not like somebody's just sweeping and mopping floors. A lot of times I've seen stories where custodians had powerful, powerful influence on the students. They would be kind, they would be loving, they would ask them how they're doing, they would take very good care of the place, showing that there was a lot of care, people were valued. And it's amazing that no matter what position a person holds, they can give so much value to other people's lives and help them and be there for them and train them, educate them in certain skills and certain functions. So I always think about that just as much. You know, any self-fulfilling prophecies basically are a lie. So again, do the brain jitsu, turn those things around. And you know, you might get bombarded, you probably will, at least at first, when you try this with negative thoughts constantly, because that's all we're used to. But when you think about that, your mental GPS, flip those around. I'll just stop immediately and say, no, I am smart, I'm intelligent, I am capable, and know that you have value that's way beyond anything that could possibly be measured, because it's true. You know, if we expect to fail again, we will fail, because he who aims at nothing shall surely hit it every time. You're not aiming for nothing anymore. You're aiming for the greatness and getting back in there. And so you think about even a pearl. You know, a pearl is beautiful. and they make beautiful jewelry and things like that. But this poor little thing, when it started out, well, I shouldn't say the poor little pearl, but the poor little, little critter having this, you get inside this oyster, and this sand is cutting and it's sharp and it hurts. And this oyster is going, oh my gosh, this hurts so badly. Well, that's what happens to us a lot of times. Things hurt. Things that people said, things that people did to us or to our loved ones or something like that. And we're experiencing a lot of that right now in the world. And yet it's sharp and it's constant and it's painful. So what does this little oyster do? It starts putting this white pearly liquid around it to coat it, so that it doesn't hurt anymore. And it keeps doing that until it's actually created a beautiful pearl, even though what it was trying to do was just take away the pain and cover it. But we do that too. We will continue to coat ourselves, coat our heart with good, positive things, people, relationships, to take away that pain and to build us up into something very beautiful. So always think about that. Today is a new day, not when you're 20 pounds thinner, not when you're married like an ex-partner or anything. Today is the first day of your life. And so just think about that. Pat yourself on the back for who you are now and what you're doing. That is so critical. And just think, oh, no, you know what? Those days are over. Ask God to show you how you look through His eyes. Because when I've gotten so mad at myself and hated myself and been self-destructive, and then I said, God, would you show me how I look through your eyes? And what He will show you is how He sees you. It's valuable, loved, and of great worth, great price. So always think about that. And know that today is the day of a new beginning for you. And just in the last few minutes, I'll share some what we call famous failures. And I think most of you are going to recognize these names, but it was people who said, I'm not giving up. I don't care what has happened to me. And so no matter where you are in your current life, think about these people. Think about how they changed in addition to the ones that I mentioned to you a few minutes ago. The Beatles. The Beatles were like phenomenal. They were everything. Everybody just worshiped them practically and thought, oh my gosh, the Beatles were the thing several years ago. But when they tried out for Decca Records, which at the time was like huge, they said, we don't like your sound. And they have no business, no future in the show business. Excuse me, they were everything. But that's what they were told. You don't have any future in show business. We don't like your sound. Well, it was different from what we knew in America at the time. It was an English sound, British sound. But did they let that keep them in like little bars and stuff like? No. They said, we're going to prove you wrong. And they did, by far. Albert Einstein was not able to speak until he was almost 4 years old. And his teacher said he would never amount to much. We're talking Albert Einstein. Oprah Winfrey was demoted from her job as a newscaster because she was told that she wasn't fit for television. Well, now she's a bazillionaire and impacted lives all over the world. Did she let that get her down? That big rejection? Because we're all rejected at times. That was a huge rejection for her, but she went, nope, I don't think so. I'm going to prove you wrong, and she did. Michael Jordan, basketball king. After being cut from his high school basketball team, he went home, locked his bedroom door, and cried. Everybody knows the name of Michael Jordan. Walt Disney, I already talked about him a little bit. The newspaper that he was fired from said that he lacked imagination. Can you imagine that? Walt Disney, of all people, lacking imagination. They had no original ideas. Really? Okay. So you see how what people say, how they treat us, should not have any effect really on where we end up at, because it's just words. It's just words, and look at them. Steve Jobs, at age 30, was devastated when he was removed from the company that he actually started. Well, we all know Steve Jobs too, and then he invented iPhone, iPad, everything like that. Okay, but he started that company, he was dismissed, and then he rose again to become one of the most successful and famous men in the entire world after a huge letdown and rejection. Grandma Moses, I remember that name from when I was a kid. She was 76 years old, had to quit doing her needlepoint because her arthritis was so bad she couldn't maneuver the needle. Well, she ended up painting, and her first painting sold for $3, and guess what it sold for later? $10,000. Because again, at an older age with crippled hands, she said, nope, not going there. Colonel Sanders, age 60s, on Social Security, closed his service station. He was broke, he was rejected, everything bad happened to him. So what happened to Colonel Sanders? Well, we all know Kentucky Fried Chicken all over the world. Again, he didn't let that keep him down. Barbara Hillary became the first black woman to reach the North Pole at age 75. I can't even imagine that. Harry Bernstein published his first book, The Invisible Wall, at age 96. Mary Hardison became the oldest woman to tandem paraglide at the age of 101. Really? Okay, she did. I told you about the former Miss Teen USA and what she did, which was phenomenal. Teenager, I've seen that 2 different times, where they lived in poverty, they lived in shelters, became very successful and won scholarships to get them through college. And one last story, my one last minute, is how is this for unfettered, untied up determination? There was a California man who missed his 1942 graduation because he was locked in an internment camp. He was Japanese, and it was an internment camp for people during World War II. Well, the LA Times said that 89-year-old Don Miata walked across the class of 2014's graduation stage at Newport High, age 72, after he was denied his own cap and gown back when he graduated, way back when. And so if he can hang on to that, my gosh, think of what you can do. So I just want you to be encouraged, go forward. Always keep your thoughts where they should be, up on God. Go forward. Thank you so much. Have a blessed week.